Hi, I'm Dr. Jeremy Neal. I'm a philosophy professor at Houston Baptist University. I am recording this video in November of 2013, and this is the 50th anniversary of a very important document in American history, Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham City Jail. King penned this letter while he was sitting in prison in the city of Birmingham, where he had been arrested for violating the city's ordinance against marching and protesting without a permit. Of course, King had applied legally for a permit, but the city had denied him that permit on grounds that were inconsequential, but the real reason was because the leaders of the city were segregationists and did not want King to be able to march in favor of a policy of integration in the city bus system. America was a very different place at that time. The American South was a place where segregation practices were widespread and had been so for many generations. Blacks and whites could not sit on buses in the same aisles. African Americans could not drink out of the same water fountains as their white counterparts. They could not be served at the same booths or tables at restaurants. And so Martin Luther King Jr. at the time was leading a major social renovation or a civil rights revolution all across the American South. He had come to Birmingham from the city of Atlanta, where he was the pastor of a major church, the Ebenezer Baptist Church. And upon coming to Birmingham to lead the city bus boycott, King found himself in prison. He penned the Birmingham City Jail letter in response to an editorial that had been penned by 8 white clergymen from Alabama. So King responded to these 8 white clergymen, and he argued against them that it was acceptable for him to engage in the kinds of protest practices that he was doing. The clergymen had criticized King for disrupting social order, for disrupting the peace. But King responded that it is acceptable to disrupt the social order and in particular, to violate the law when that law is unjust. The law in particular that he thought was unjust was the permit law, denying him the ability to march and protest. And King quoted the famous philosopher Thomas Aquinas, and that's why this is a philosophy moment today. Because Thomas Aquinas was an inspirational figure for King, and King said, quoting Aquinas, that an unjust law is no law at all. Aquinas, of course, posited the doctrine of natural law, the idea that there is, in addition to the law of the land, another deeper law, a law in our minds, written on our minds, that we have just by virtue of being rational human beings. And King said that if a human law does not accord with that natural law that is written on our minds, if the principles of a human law violate the moral principles of the natural law, then that human law is an unjust law. It is no law at all and ought therefore not to be obeyed. King felt that the permit ordinances in Alabama were unjust because they discriminated against a people group, African Americans. King is an iconic figure because he recognized that the times in which he lived called for significant action, not for passive, complacent responses. And yet King's actions and his reasoning in the Birmingham City Jail letter raise important questions for us. As King well knew, they raise questions about when and if it is acceptable to violate the laws of the land. Under what circumstances is it acceptable to violate the laws of the land? How do you know whether you are right and the laws of the land are wrong? How can you trust yourself? How can you trust your moral reasoning abilities? This is a deep question, a question that has cut to the heart many social reformers in the past, civil disobedience reformers, like Mohandas Gandhi, as an example, or like Martin Luther King Jr. I don't have an answer to this. I'm not sure when it is acceptable to follow the dictates of your conscience and violate the laws of the land. But I do hope that in circumstances in which there is significant injustice that is institutionalized in society, that I will have the strength not to be complacent, but to respond forcefully and with courage in the way that Martin Luther King Jr. did. And that is, I think, the message that is key today in this philosophy moment, is that philosophy can be used for practical purposes to bring good to people, and it can be used to reform laws, legal dictates that are deeply unjust. That is the lesson that Martin Luther King Jr. well knew, and it is the lesson that we can take away from this philosophy moment today. Thank you.